all the benefits of green roofs. I am particularly excited about these building features because I think they have so many benefits, and are not too difficult to implement in a building. Of course, as you can think, if you are giving back the land that you're occupying with your building, with the footprint of your building, you're giving back that piece of landscape again by reintroducing it on top of your building. You are obviously creating a habitat not just for human beings, but potentially for an increase of biodiversity for plants and animals, and especially if you're thinking about pollinators, for instance, all the insects, bees, all of that. If you are planting certain types of plants, they will have a habitat, a living space for them as well. So I think that's a really important factor to consider. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why certain cantons in Switzerland, for instance, are mandating green roofs at certain buildings. On the one hand, it's about saving energy, and also promoting biodiversity, specifically within urban areas as well. Keep in mind as well, green roofs, sometimes we do refer to them as vegetated roofs as well, or living roofs. So you might find these terms interchangeably within research or within different countries and all of that. So yeah, big plus, very big benefit. And then of course something that we talk about very often as well is that retention of rainwater and that delayed runoff of water. On the one hand, that soil does not only hold water, so it is storing part of that rainwater. The plants, of course, they are soaking up that water as well, so they provide additional storage for that water, and then only gradually some of that excess water will run off. But at the same time, much of that water will stay in the soil and then eventually evaporate again. So therefore, you're kind of promoting that natural water cycle that we find in nature, of rainwater evaporating again. You're reinstating that, and of course you are then relieving the infrastructure, especially in our highly populated urban areas. You're relieving the sewage systems that are not capable of coping with these amounts of waters, and taking away a lot of that. So that's a massive benefit that, especially here in Auckland, we have seen the kind of devastation that the rain can bring in such a short time. It potentially can also increase the quality of that runoff water. The research is a bit mixed about it, if there is actually a beneficial effect of these soil types filtering the rainwater as well. I think there could be a bit more research about that as well, thinking about the different layers of soils, thinking about how that system works to actually provide a beneficial filtration as well at the same time. It would be really interesting to see where that goes. Then of course we have the idea of sequestering carbon dioxide as well, because the plants, they are metabolizing CO2. I do have to note that the installation, the construction of a green roof itself does have a lot of embodied carbon as well, such as creating that green roof does require a lot of energy. If you think about all the soil that needs to be transported onto the site, that needs to be lifted on top of your roof, it does require energy, but so would any other type of construction as well. And with the plants, at least you will have the benefit of those plants at least mitigating some of that energy that has been spent already. Another benefit in this regard is that also the material itself is recyclable. If you think about any other protective layer that you would put on top of a roof, whether it's a flat roof or a pitched roof, that material has a lifespan by itself as well, and it needs to be if you're thinking about a circular economy as well. So we have to think about disassembly of that material and what is going to happen after its lifespan as well. At least with a green roof, with the soil and the plants, you can sort of give it back to nature in that sense as well. So it is recyclable. Um, a big plus, a big benefit is the mitigation of urban heat islands. And this, in fact, is a major decision factor for the city of Chicago on why they chose to promote green roofs in their public buildings as well. So one of the documents I will touch on later on and that I have used for this research as well is referring to a study that has been done in the US. So, of course, on the one hand, the green roofs will reduce the urban heat islands because the surface itself of a green roof is not heating up as much as any other types of material would, especially concrete and asphalt and these things. Not just because of their material properties, but also because of the color of these materials. On the other hand as well, and we were talking about this when it comes to water retention, so the water that is stored within these plants and the soil, eventually it will evaporate. So evaporation will is quite energy intensive. So it will take temperature. It will convert the temperature of the air around it. And it uses that energy to den the water for it to evaporate. So therefore, it is cooling down the atmosphere around it. So a green roof therefore will cool down its environment, its immediate environment. It is also, green roofs are also very good insulators, or maybe not very good ones, but they are insulators. They are helping, in summertime, they are helping to cool down the buildings because of that evaporation effect. And in wintertime, especially in colder climates where we have dry winters, they're actually quite good insulators because that additional layer of soil is providing an additional layer of material that potentially does insulate. Even if it's not an amazingly good insulating, doesn't have amazingly good insulating properties, it still means that it is providing some sort of resistance to the heat flux that we normally experience within buildings. Keep in mind that thermal conductivity coefficients of materials, so the material's ability to slow down that heat loss, it does change whether the material is dry or if it is wet. So if the soil is soaked up with water, because water is actually a good conductor, so it is letting heat through faster, it will not be as good of an insulator in a wet type of climate. So especially thinking about Auckland, for instance, where we have a lot of rainfall in wintertime, it might not provide as much of an insulation as we are hoping it would. But nonetheless, it does provide some insulation. Green roofs can even be used for urban gardening. So as we were talking before, if you think about an intensive green roof that can be used just like a garden can be used, so all of a sudden you have an additional benefit within your building. You have a spatial quality that is really beneficial for the people who live in your building, and they can even use it as an economic opportunity as well, whether that is for their own use or it could be used in a restaurant type of facility. So that is really exciting as well, and something that's explored very often these days as well. Another big benefit, and that's we think about the different places and cities that are promoting green roofs. The city of Stuttgart in Germany, they, one of the main factors for them to adapt this technology is because of air pollution. So because the plants are binding these kind of pollutants, especially dust and all these particles from the exterior emissions, they can improve air quality massively. So that's another benefit for it. Then as well, something that we sometimes forget to talk about, because it sometimes is mentioned as a challenging aspect of green roof, is the combination of green roofs and any type of solar energy production systems, such as solar panels or PV photovoltaic panels. People always say it's a bit problematic because the grasses, as you can see on that image on the right hand side, because the flowers and the grasses, they grow and they will overshadow the solar panels. But in fact, because of that cooling effect of the vegetation, because they are keeping the surface temperature of your roof down, it means that the PV or the solar panels are actually performing at a better, more efficient way. Like many electronic appliances, if they are getting too hot or if they're being too cold, you probably know that from your own experience with having your phone out in summertime, or if you're going into the snowy mountains, they don't perform as well when they're too hot or too cold. So having a better climate actually helps. You have to make sure that you leave enough space in between the solar panels to ensure maintenance between them. So that could maybe reduce the amount of solar panels that you're able to fit onto a particular roof area. But nonetheless, the two of them are actually really, really symbiotic, so to speak. Another benefit is also that the kind of anchorage system that you use for these panels, the soil can actually help to anchor them down. So the soil is actually providing that weight. So there's specific systems that you can get in combination with a green roof especially. So you're saving a bit on that construction or structural pieces as well. In general, green roofs are actually quite good at performing as a protection for the waterproofing. They do provide that protection for these membranes by forming that cohesive layer on top of them, so that there's no physical damage that's happening to the material below. And in general, they are actually increasing the durability and the longevity of a roofing system, because they are providing a really good protection to the layers below. So especially the waterproofing membrane, that's not going to be exposed to mechanical damage or UV lighting and all of that. So that will have a longer lifespan. And also in comparison with any other protective layers, any roof cladding, any roof tiles or anything. Roughly speaking, a roof will have a lifespan of somewhere around 17-20 years until parts of a roof will need to be replaced. And a well-maintained green roof has actually a lifespan of more like around 40 years. So that's almost twice as long as a conventional type of roof system. And in general, it just looks nicer as well, especially if you maybe if you have grown up in a more like of a hilly landscape, and you grow up on top of a mountain or up above, and you look down onto the village or the city that you live in, your roof becomes kind of that fifth facade. So it's not just that the four walls of your building, but the roof is really important as well. And a nice green roof looks much nicer to look at. It's more pleasant, and again, you're introducing a bit of green space within the urban fabric as well. Another thing to keep in mind as well, if you have certain types of roofing materials or cladding, especially certain metals or big roof windows are very often a problem as well. They can generate some kind of reflections or glare that is really that could cause problems for the people living up above on the hills and mountains. So green roofs, obviously, they wouldn't reflect any of that sunlight. But at the same time, we also have to address some of the challenges or um, the cons of a green roof as well. And of course, as most people would state, that the higher costs are one of the most um, biggest challenges. And it's definitely something in everyday life of an architect. That's something that you will encounter probably the most, is that clients, they are scared of implementing green roofs because it might be unknown to them, or very often as well, it might just be too expensive for them. But I think given the ecological crisis and the changing climate that we do find ourselves in, I think that that argument of cost of money, um, we need to fight that narrative as well. That document that I mentioned earlier, um, I think it was issued, I'm not quite sure if it's from a public building in Washington, D.C., I think it was. Um, they made a very comprehensive analysis of that green roof, in terms of its ecological performance, in terms of its technical requirements, and everything. And they also did a very detailed economic analysis, so a financial analysis of the costs. What they found out, and I find that extremely interesting, is that yes, the initial costs for the installation and then the ongoing costs for replacement and maintenance, they do have a value of what we can see here on that first graph. They do have a value of roughly $18 per square foot. So that's the kind of investment that you have to pay. And this graph is actually showing the lifespan of roughly 50 years of a green roof. So you have to pay roughly $18 per square foot for a green roof. But then out of that, the savings and the benefits, the financial benefits that you gain from that investment are massive. And you can see the other, what is it, 5 bars, they are outweighing that initial cost by far. On the one hand, you have certain cities or countries where you have to pay for the stormwater, and because now you are generating less, not all the water needs to be drained off, so you're generating less impact onto the sewage system, so you're saving money from not having to pay to your council. You are saving a lot of money because of its better insulating properties, so you're saving on energy. You are saving through the CO2 sequestration, and then your overall real estate values are going up, mostly because of the longer lifespan of the roof, and because of all the benefits that come with it, that we had a look at it before as well. And then on top of all of that, of course, you have the community benefits, which are really, really hard to put into to calculate properly. And these are the benefits that are, and they are outlined here as the biodiversity, air quality, heat islands, etc. So these are massive. And the research came to a conclusion that with $1 that you are investing now into a green roof, within 50 years, you will have that investment will have turned into $1.4 of value. This research has been done in US dollar, but it's, you get the point, you get the ratio between both of them. So within 50 years, you have earned your investment back. And if you're now also considering the community benefits, again, thinking about biodiversity, air quality, the kind of mitigating of flood risks and all of that, in 50 years, that $1 will have turned into roughly 3.6 US dollar. So there's a massive, massive benefit financially as well, which people, if you have a short-minded kind of perspective, you might not be able to see those benefits. And this is exactly why we need to start to subsidize these techniques as well. And we have to create incentives for people or owners of building to implement such regenerative elements within our built environment as well. And last but not least, the payback rate. So if you are investing, let's assume you are paying an extra of $100,000 now to build a green roof, they estimated that the payback rate will be 6.2 years. So within a bit more than 6 years, you will have made up these extra investment costs because of saving energy, because of all these other kind of benefits that you're gaining through it. 6.2 years. That is not a long time, and I was quite stunned to see that research done as well. I will link the document down below, and I will make it accessible for you, so you can browse through it as well. Another kind of challenge that's often cited is that the detailing it's important that you do it properly to avoid any kind of leaks, and sometimes if leaks do appear, they might be a bit more difficult to access or to spot as well. This is a very common issue, but rest assured, I find coming from Central Europe, coming from Switzerland, it's a very proven method to build these kind of green roofs, and with the necessary the knowledge on how to do these things and working carefully, it is absolutely feasible to construct green roofs without the risk of leakage. Of course, as you learned before, there might potentially be an impact on the construction, on the structure of your building. So that means because of that extra weight, especially if you're going for an intensive green roof that might require quite a bit of soil, it might have an impact on the dimension of your construction. It might have an impact on the cost of your structural system as well. So these costs, I assume, they have not been considered in the research that I have just shown you before about the financial benefits, but nonetheless, you can achieve similar results with an extensive roof. And the costs of the structure, I assume, would not differ that much. Because of that higher soil, with certain systems, if there is a higher layer of soil, it might have an impact on your building height, and you might have to consider that, especially if you are quite constrained within the building code, if there is a maximum building height that you're struggling to meet anyways. So a green roof might cause a little bit of a challenge there. But it's something that is feasible, or if you know about it early enough, you can react with what type of system that you implement. And then lastly, it is really important that these kind of systems, that they are designed in collaboration with specialists, with landscape architects, with people who understand what type of plants are appropriate to plant on these green roofs. If you are planting just any kind of plant, on the one hand, you might risk that the plants might not survive, that you're not providing a proper environment, the nutrients and everything for them to thrive. And therefore, obviously, you're wasting a bit of money because you have to replant everything. On the other hand, if you're planting, or if you're choosing species that are not native to a certain site, they can potentially disbalance an ecosystem as well. So they could attract or feed certain species or insects that might be harmful for the environment, that might be predators within that ecosystem, or if you have certain plants that might spread quite easily, they might eventually, they obviously through wind pollination, all of that, they do find their way into the wild, so to speak, so they find their way into the adjacent landscape, and they might potentially grow in places and then take away space from other plants to grow. So that's why it's very important to consult with these specialists and have a concept about which type of plants that you are promoting, that you're planting on top of that. Keep in mind that over time, there will be an initial planting on your green roof, but that may change over time because again, you have pollinators, you have wind spreading seeds and everything, so that initial plant or vegetation layer that can change over time. And you can either maintain that or you can let it happen if it's actually beneficial for the greater system as well. So yeah, these are some of the main benefits and challenges. There's more, some of the sources that I have used for this research are listed below. Definitely have a look at that. The document from the US that I mentioned, it's very comprehensive and very interesting findings. Perfect. Thank you very much.